Don't go anywhere.
They haven't come in, they're just traveling, they weren't able to be back tonight.
All right, it is 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get this meeting started. Nathan, would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember McPherson.
Here.
Councilmember Biggs.
Here.
Councilmember Laraway.
Yes.
Council President Bruce.
Here.
Mayor Steer.
Here. And if you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So the first item is the consent agenda.
How about you mind? Well, mine.
Yeah, go check it out.
Recess already.
Recess while he sets his car alarm.
Did you hit it, Mark?
I didn't touch it.
Did you kick the tire?
It's because it doored it, that's why. I crashed into it, I started making noises, I don't know.
Mark's just trying to buy time so he can sit down.
That was yours? Okay.
Well, obviously it works.
All right, first item is the consent agenda. Questions or comments or anything you want pulled for discussion?
Last call, you guys good? I'm good. I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as published.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? Nathan, would you poll the council?
Councilmember McPherson.
Yes.
Councilmember Biggs.
Yes.
Councilmember Laraway.
Yes.
Council President Bruce.
Yes.
And that motion carries. All right, we will start with the Week of the Young Child proclamation.
Do you have anyone for
Oh,
public?
I'm sorry, public comment, I missed that one. Is there anybody who wishes to address the council? Okay. All right, now we'll go to the Week of the Young Child proclamation. And we have some representatives here tonight. Whereas the Idaho Association for Education of Young Children, Idaho IAC, is celebrating the Week of the Young Child, April 6th through 12, 2024. And whereas we are working to promote and inspire high-quality early childhood experiences for our state's youngest citizens that can provide a foundation of learning and success for the children in CUNA, and whereas teachers and others who work on their behalf of the young children birth through age 8 who make a difference in the lives of young children in CUNA deserve thanks and recognition, and whereas public policies that support early learning for all young children are crucial to young children's futures and to the prosperity of our society, now therefore, I, Joe Steer, Mayor of the City of CUNA, Idaho, do hereby proclaim April 6th through 12, 2024 as the Week of the Young Child. And do hereby recognize that when our community invests in early childhood education and educators, we also invest in our children and families. Did you want to come up and say anything, or? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. And I do appreciate the CUNA School District's efforts in working through that. We were one of the first ones to have kindergarten and full-time kindergarten, and this early I've been really impressed with the program that they've started here in CUNA. It's been very helpful. Next, we have Grange Proclamation. Whereas the Grange strengthens individuals, families, and communities through grassroots action, service, education, advocacy, and agriculture awareness, and whereas the Grange has played a major role in the development of rural America and passage of important legislation during 3 centuries, and whereas the Grange of the 21st century continues to be an active force in thousands of neighborhoods across the country, creating connections between people, communities, and organizations, even through periods of social unrest and disruption, and whereas the Grange is committed to the development and potential in families, children, youth, and adults of all ages through dynamic programs and experiences that educate, engage, and enrich lives. And whereas the Grange emphasizes civic responsibility and the involvement of people in the legislative process, cultivating connections between citizens and their government. And whereas the Grange offers opportunities for civil discussions among people of all viewpoints and opinions, serving as a safe haven for exploring important social and legislative issues of the day. And whereas the Grange strengthens hometowns through volunteerism, community support, and legislative action, building up rural America for benefit of all who live there. And whereas the Grange motto is essentials unity, in non-essentials liberty, in all things charity, has guided the Grange mission through the advocacy, community service, and openness to all. And whereas Grange members everywhere wish to celebrate and express their pride in the legacy of their highly respected organization, now therefore I, Joe Steer, Mayor of the City of CUNA, do hereby proclaim April 2024 to be Grange Month in the city of CUNA, Idaho. Do we have any representatives here from the Grange? All right, next we have a presentation from the Idaho Humane Society. Leanne Gilbert.
You can control the screen with your mouse if you just want to scroll through it when you're presenting.
There we go. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Steer and members of the council. My name is Leanne Gilberg. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Idaho Humane Society. Also here this evening is our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Jeff Rosenthal, our Director of Animal Control Services, Craig Nixon, and our Chief Operating Officer, Chris Schaefer. Thank you for having us this evening. We're proud to serve the citizens of CUNA, and we value our relationship with your city. We also value the positive working relationship we have our officers with your officers. So thank you for that. I wanted to start by just giving you a bit, okay, am I gonna, hang on, there we go. Look, just a little bit of information about what we've been up to at the Idaho Humane Society this year. We saved 9,636 pets. That's a save rate of 94% for dogs and 95% for cats. And those numbers allow us to call ourselves a no-kill shelter. We reunited 1,464 lost pets with their owners and spayed or neutered 9,833 pets, preventing unwanted litters. We provided veterinary care to 10,418 privately owned pets from predominantly low-income owners in our public veterinary hospital, and we supplied over 68,000 pounds of food to economically challenged families and Meals on Wheels recipients so that they could keep their pets in their homes. The majority of these efforts were funded by donor funds, not coming from the animal control contracts. We account for those separately, but we thought you might just like to see some of the good things that we are doing at the Idaho Humane Society. Specifically related to CUNA, we responded to 352 calls or incident responses. We only issued 6 citations for animal code violations, and that number probably seems pretty small, but We take the approach of community policing. We want to solve problems with the owners for the best outcome for the people and their pets. We don't issue a citation unless it gets to that point. We warn, we educate, and try to take other pathways. And you can see by some of the other numbers that we have here, we issued 44 letters and warnings for barking dogs, 21 letters for dogs at large, 35 warnings for other animal code violations, and our officers educated versus cited 100 times. That all being said, we did handle 496 animals from CUNA and impounded 352, but we were able to return 99 of those lost pets to their owners. Just to give you an idea of some of the animals that we see, these are just an example of the many animals. One of the ways that we get animals brought into us from CUNA is through our animal control officers. This is Holly. She was a 7-year-old blind dog who was picked up by an animal control officer as a stray. She was able to be reunited with her owner in 7 hours. So this little blind girl got home very quickly. Then we have Ozzy. The police actually dropped him off with us. And after holding him for the requisite period, he went unclaimed. So we went ahead and neutered him and vaccinated him, microchipped him, and put him up for adoption. And after 2 weeks in our care, he was sent to his forever home. We also get animals from your community through owner surrenders. Sometimes owners just have to give up their pets. And this particular girl, Bella, was surrendered because her owners were moving. But before we could put her up for adoption, she had to have a tail amputation because her tail was injured. So we were able to provide that medical care for her through grant funding that we have. That money doesn't come from the animal control contracts. It's for medical cases that we take care of in our public and our shelter medical clinics for animals under our care. She was with us for about a month and a half by the time she recuperated and got adopted, but she did happily get put into her forever home. And then there was poor Leonidas. He was brought in by animal care and control officer. He had sustained multiple punctures along his abdomen and his hind legs. He had a broken pelvis. We think he was probably attacked by another animal. So we were able to fix him up. We once again used our grant funds and repaired some hernias, did an FHO, did a dental. He spent some time in foster, and then was happily adopted. So as you can see, we get animals from the CUNA community from a number of different intake channels as a result of our contract with you all. As you probably know, we provide animal control services to pretty much everybody in Ada County, with the exception of Garden City, with whom we only have a sheltering agreement. In relation to the big picture, CUNA's population accounts for 5.8% of the population that we serviced in 2023. The calls we responded to for CUNA represented 5.9%. The fees that CUNA is paying represented 5.1% of the total contract cost. So you can see there's a pretty close correlation between the calls and the population base of CUNA in relation to the total fees that we collect for the animal control service contracts. Sorry, just a second. For fiscal year 25, our fee request is $163,877. That is a 6.67% increase from this year, fiscal year 24. But it is less than the total increase, which is 9% overall. So you are getting a little bit less of an increase than some of your other contracting agencies. We allocated the cost, once again, based on population and historical call volumes and historical allocation methodology. But as with every organization right now, in the recent past, our costs continue to go up. We've seen, primarily due to continued pressure on our payroll, and we are also hoping to add one additional animal control officer in fiscal year 25 because the number of people that we're servicing and the area that we're servicing just continues to grow. That would obviously not be allocated all to CUNA. 5% of it is all that's going to be allocated to CUNA because you pay 5% of the total contract. We've continued to increase our pay rates to try to be competitive for all levels of our employees. from entry level to management. And we continue to work to get our starting rates up to a good living wage. And we do our best to reduce and maintain our operating expenses to offset those higher personnel costs to the best extent that we can. The total animal control program for the whole county that we run, it employs 41 FTEs for over 500,000 citizens. So it's fairly efficient, we think. And that's accounts for about a third of our workforce. So about a third of our employees work in the, somehow related to the animal control program. And that covers not only the enforcement, but also the animal care, veterinary care for like the basics when they come in, not these extensive surgeries. Customer service representatives that deal with people who come in to drop off an animal or redeem an animal. And then also our dispatchers and administration, payroll, HR, that kind of stuff. So payroll and personnel costs are the biggest chunk of the animal control program cost. It accounts for, those costs count for 75% of our contract costs. Since the fiscal year 23 budget was prepared, so 2 years ago, just to give you kind of a feel, salaries for veterinarians have increased over 20%, and technicians have increased 15%. Animal control officers have increased over 13%, shelter staff have increased 12%, and the majority of these positions still pay under $20 an hour. So I included in the packet that we sent you, oops, went too far.
I'll get you back, 1 second.
Got me? Sorry.
Oh, wait.
I'm just trying to go to the second to last slide. In the packet that was included, the page 14 included a history of our payroll pay rates by position for the major positions. And it showed you a 5-year trend. And you can see that, many of those positions 5 years ago were paying $10, $11 an hour. And now, in order to hire people, on average, we're at $15 an hour for some of those similar positions. So I just wanted you to all see that, because I know you got it ahead of time, and see how much of a, increase we've had, because McDonald's is paying $15 an hour. We can't hire somebody for $10 or $11 anymore. And then just finally, one other thing I wanted to just touch on is our animal control training program. Our training program for our officers is very important to us, so it's something we've continued to develop, and Director Nixon has made another more improvements to that just in the time that he's been there. Our field training for officers starts with 8 to 10 weeks with an experienced animal control officer, what we call a field training officer. Then once they're on their own, they progress through what we call NACA, or the National Animal Control Association, Level 1 and Level 2 certifications online. They also are assigned online continuous education classes, and Director Nixon started an in-service training with the Ada County prosecutors on a monthly basis, which has been incredibly helpful. And then they have biweekly team meetings that include training for such areas as report writing, policies and procedures, or whatever the hot topic at the time might be. So we're doing our best to try to provide high-quality service for you all at what we think to be a reasonable rate. And we do value our relationship with you and hope that you see the value that we provide to your community. And we thank you for your time this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions?
I don't have any. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, that is a job I could never do, so I appreciate all of you and your efforts and the work, and it really has been good now, the working with the police department, and we're happy with response times and things like that, so thank you and bless you.
May I add something?
Yes.
Another thing I got to tell you from experience, we used to have to catch the dogs and put them right around in a car with us, because we had no place to take them, because we weren't under a contract. and we put them in a makeshift kennel behind Paul's and kept calling. We spent hours and hours of man resources trying to locate the owners for these dogs, so thank you.
We appreciate that you appreciate our services, and we enjoy providing that service for y'all.
He used to be with CUNA Police.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I figured you picked up on that. All right, well, thank you so very much. All right, that takes us to case numbers 23010A, ordinance amendment. The City of Cuna requests consideration from the City Council for an ordinance amendment to combine Title V zoning regulations and Title VI subdivision regulations into one development regulation title. Doug Hanson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, Doug Hanson, CUNA Planning and Zoning, 751 West 4th Street, CUNA, Idaho, 83634. Case number 23-01-OA ordinance amendment to combine Title V and VI of CUNA City Code was remanded back to the Commission by the City Council on October 17th, 2023, after the public hearing had been closed at the request of a citizen to submit additional testimony for the record. At this point, the application timeline is as follows. A public open house was held on April 5th, 2023. Planning and Zoning Commission had public hearing number 1 on June 13th, 2023. There was no in-person testimony. Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing number 2 was held June 27th, 2023. There was no in-person testimony. The commission recommended approval of the ordinance amendment to the council. City Council public hearing number 1 was held September 5th, 2023. One individual provided in-person testimony. City Council public hearing number 2 was held on September 19th, 2023. 3 individuals provided in-person testimony. The public hearing was then closed. At the City Council meeting on October 17th, 2023, the ordinance amendment was remanded back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a third public hearing that was held on November 14th, 2023. 3 individuals provided in-person testimony. The public hearing was then closed. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on December 12th, 2023, the commission recommended approval with the proposed changes as outlined in Exhibit 2.22, which can be viewed beginning on page 295 of the packet or through the application material link in staff's memo under application items. This brings us to the City Council public hearing number 3 this evening. With the exception of the changes proposed by the commission for lot splits, there have been no other material changes to the ordinance amendment since City Council was provided the application materials link via email on November 13th, 2023. Staff would request one additional change to the lot split section on the record. Section proposed 59602A12 reads, maximum number of parcels created. The maximum number of parcels that can be created from contiguous original tracts submitted under a single application is 5. If more splits than this amount are intended from original and contiguous tracts, that action shall occur through the city's subdivision process. 5 lots was initially proposed to create uniformity in the max number of parcels that could be created by way of both combination plats and lot splits. However, it was brought to the attention of staff through our public testimony that this could cause issue in determining which property owner had the right to file an application for a final available split when separate property owners are involved. Staff would propose that the maximum number of parcels created under a single lot split application when 2 contiguous tracts are involved be changed back from 5 to 6 as currently permitted under existing city code. With that, I will stand by for any questions.
Okay, questions for Doug?
Not at this time.
Not yet. Not at this time. Thank you, Doug.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to testify that didn't get a chance to sign in? It's right there on the clip. All right, we will go ahead and start with Ann Valentine. If you would, just step to the mic and make sure the green light's on by pushing the base.
Okay.
And state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Okay, Ann Valentine, 5905 North Stafford Lane, Meridian, Idaho, 83646. I am the sales manager for Tricidio, and I feel like I have no backups right now, and that I might have my house TV'd after I come here and talk about this. But I'm here to talk to one part of this proposed change, and that is the lot coverage change. We at Tricidio currently are having to reevaluate all of the product that we are putting down on the lots, because in R4 and R6, the patio, the covered patio, the garage, and the home can only account for 40% of the lot. This is problematic for the demographic, our demographic, which 85% of them are empty nesters with no children and do not create any public burden to the school systems. They are high taxpayer base, and they raise property values. And we are in favor of you changing it to even something like 50%, or not even counting in covered patios. That would allow us to continue to put in product like the product that is already existing in Lagarno Terra. That subdivision is at Deer Flat and Hubbard. You may not be familiar with it, but it is all primarily one-story, large garages, nice patio homes that have nice values, that have high values to them. We would like to continue this product instead of being forced to put two-story homes that cater to a demographic that will put a burden on the school system. And also, my bosses wanted to make it clear that because of the affordability issues, the land developers are making the lots smaller and smaller. And this is going to affect what type of taxpayer and home product that is continued to be built in CUNA. Even if it doesn't pass tonight, because when I signed in, I think I was the only one that was in favor of testifying for it. Again, we would just implore that the council and the mayor consider changing the ratio on R4 and R6 to 50%, or not include covered patios, so that we can continue to put in like product and protect home values.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Cindy Geeson.
Good evening, Mayor Steer, Council President Bruce, and council members. My name is Cindy Geeson, and I live at 1363 South Ash Avenue, Cuna, Idaho. And I'd like to say I'm strongly opposed to case 23010A, which is an immense, complicated, and non-transparent effort to change Title V and Title VI of our official CUNA City Code. Most definitely, our CUNA City Code needs updating, and some nice cleanup, corrections, and improved wording of our current titles has been included in this proposed, this proposal, and I recognize that and I appreciate that. However, the way this 361-page omnibus code changing 23010A case is being moved through our hearing process is, in my opinion, disrespectful and not appreciated. Typically, our ordinances are less than 10 pages, sometimes up to 40. They usually address only one topic or one sentence, section of a chapter at a time. With that method, the ordinance is easy to read, investigate, and understand. Wise and informed decisions are made that way. For case 230108, none of this can happen, and we should quit wasting our time trying to fix it. Every time a new issue comes up, there's going to be somebody up here standing like this last lady that has something else they found in it. It's too big. Fortunately, if this is denied, the efforts that went into the proposal, the rewrite, the combining additions and extractions of our Title V and VI code will not be wasted. I suggest that everyone involved regroup and include citizens chosen and choose topics related. Let's see. I suggest that everyone involved regroup and include citizen-chosen topics related, like local community advocates. Bring the citizens into the process. And I'm happy to volunteer to do that because I put in more than 120 hours looking at this thing since September, so I've learned a lot. I've submitted my written case testimony, which I'd like to ask if you could submit into your record. Should I wait? Okay. And in that, I have 3 main objections now. If you've looked at my testimony in the past, I continue to add to it because this is a never-ending process when you take these many issues and try to shove them into one ordinance. So my main problem is that there's been a lack of, the lack of providing the basic code change goals. At the very beginning of this, we've never received a comparison of the original titles and a cross-reference that, hey, I changed 5-1, and now it's called 7-23. Okay, so we can't compare ourselves. So it's almost impossible. Okay. The other thing is the process issues. There's been a lot of issues in the process. And
Cindy, that's your time. If you
okay,
can wrap up.
so in the list, there's a table, and I've kind of compiled things to support that. Many of our hearings were worthless, and so we really haven't had that much time to testify. I request that you deny this process and we start over. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Cindy.
Next, I have signed up to testify Beverly Wolf.
Beverly Wolf, 3420 West Commemoration Avenue. This ordinance is a monster. I didn't have all the months that everybody else has had, I guess, to look at it. But I started diving through it. And the first thing that comes to mind is words matter. So I appreciate your time and being able to speak to you because there's been so much, as Cindy referred to, as far as cross-referencing. And I figured it out today. It's like, oh, you have to look through this many levels to find the one that it corresponds to. Okay. It takes hours to go through even small sections. So since I don't have a lot of time, I thought I'd just bring one to your attention, which I thought was interesting, that just in parking regulations, there was a change made. It used to be under Chapter 9. I forget what chapter it's under now, but it doesn't matter. It's under the parking regulations. And that a single-family home used to have 2 parking units for each dwelling. A studio apartment used to have 2 and 1 for a visitor. So those are still consistent. Now where it gets interesting is 2 bedrooms used to have 2, I believe it's 2 units. The wording here is confusing. But now the regulation says you're going to have 2.5 per unit. How does that work? How do you give 2.5 parking units to 1 2-bedroom apartment? Is it an average? I mean, when you start looking at details like that, it's kind of funny. Then you go down to public areas like the swimming pool. And it used to be a designation of 300 square feet, so one for each 300 square feet of floor area on a unit. Now, it's up to 5. So does that mean it's a shortcut for the developers? Codes like this are complicated, I get it. I mean, why you're calling it no longer Title V, which was zoning regulations and subdivision regulations, and now you're calling it development regulation title. That hits me a little weird, because whose code is this? Who is it written for? It doesn't sound like it's written for we the people. It sounds like it's written for them, the developers. And not all of them are tax-paying citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly.
Okay, thank you. Then I have Sid Arnold.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Since no one else stood up, I assume that's me, Sid Anderson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I wrote it really quick, and my handwriting isn't very good anyway. Mayor
And I knew
Steer,
that.
council members, Sid Anderson, 2500 East Rock Falls Lane. I'm actually here in support of what's being proposed. I did read all of the code changes that were proposed prior to the last meeting that you had on it. And my only issue was the lot split ordinance, in which we discussed at length. And you proposed some changes. Those changes have been made. The only issue I had with them was that there was 5 splits rather than 6. And Director Hansen has laid out that he proposed changing that back to 6. And thus, I support what is currently being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid.
Thank you. And that's all I had signed up that marked the testify box. Is there anybody else who wishes to testify that didn't get signed in? All right. And so just for the record, I think there were actually 2 signed up to testify, or there were actually 2 signed up in favor, 2 neutral, and 16 opposed. We're going to take a minute to sift through all this. So.
Do you want to take a recess and read this, or you want to sit here? Or
What's that?
do you want to take a 5-minute recess so I can read this, or you just want to sit here and read it?
This is actually the last thing that we have on the agenda, I believe.
Okay.
so. Oh, we do have an ordinance at the end. While they're going through some of that, Doug, did you want to address the patio lot coverage?
Sure. For the record, Doug Hanson, CUNA Planning and Zoning. In this proposal for both the R4 and the R6 zones, staff is proposing to just remove the maximum lot coverage component of the official dimensional standards table, but retain the same setbacks. So a 20-foot front yard setback, 15-foot rear yard setback, and 5-foot side yard setbacks is the currently existing code. One of the number one concerns and complaints we hear as a staff from private property owners is once these homes are built, and they're built out to the 40% lot coverage, after the fact, individual homeowners can't come in and put up patio covers or request to do additions to the structure itself because they're limited by that 40% lot coverage. So rather than convolute the code with just allowing for patio covers, we chose to propose that we remove the maximum lot coverage and just ensure that all of those building envelopes are retained within the setbacks as they currently allowed by city code.
Good, thank you.
Did Doug get a copy of this?
What's that?
Did Doug get a copy of this?
I don't, did,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can we take a quick recess so I can use the restroom?
Sure. Dan, did you bring your guitar? Maybe you could provide some entertainment? Are you ready when he gets back?
Yes, sir.
All right, you ready for discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make a motion that we close Evans's presentation and move to deliberation.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries.
You want to start?
So at least 85% of the document is a lot of just grammatical and minor changes, which I applaud Doug for the painstaking detail that he's gone through on this. The rest, I still have a similar issue to the last time we talked about this, is if I don't fully understand or fully grasp, I've been taking notes all weekend on just things that have come across my mind in reading this, because it is so big that I do kind of like the idea of maybe pump the brakes and break this up into smaller sections where there's, when any changes that don't have to do with minor grammatical changes. Because if I don't fully understand some of these, how do I expect our citizens to?
We're going to apply it to them any,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gregg?
It's a lot, but it's what we directed staff to do, right? We've had 8 public hearings, 1 open house, 1 renotice due to an error in posting, good find Cindy. And, we've rehashed it. Multiple meetings, no one showed up for whatever, and here we are, we're trying to get something going. And it seems like every time we get momentum, then we tell staff, stop, never mind, we want to do something different. So, we can always change stuff later, but we've made it this far, and it seems like we get it to a point and then all of a sudden, oh, we got to change everything again. I don't think it's to the point we need to start and rewrite the book again. We move forward, and if there's something that doesn't work, we change it again. It's that simple. That's just my thought.
I think one of the biggest issues is combining 2 title sections. So there's really no way to bite off a little bit of that at a time and combine the 2 sections. So I think that's the issue here with this, and this is why this one is actually bigger than what we normally do. But just combining those 2 sections requires 2 full sections of discussion.
Mr. Loreley?
I got a couple of things. Reading the information that was provided to us, to me, reading it, it has a lot more to do with our process of disseminating information. It doesn't have that much to do with the entity subject matter. So I don't know how to address this other than, it's really, really big that the information is not getting out to the citizens in their opinion. And I also look at when we're creating something like this to create a community in a city, we have to be smarter than the fox. And when the developers come in and they have lawyers, they have big departments that chew these things up. And I like the way it's spelled out. There's more content, but I think we need that to defend ourselves for growth. It's just the way I see it. I know we have to protect ourselves, and I know, to me, it's simple enough if a regular citizen comes in and says, I want to do this, you can tell them, well, here's what you have to do. It's a simple communication thing. I don't expect the average citizen to sit down and decipher and read all of this title and try to understand it when it doesn't really pertain to their daily life. We're trying to create a guide that gives us information when developers come in and they want to do X, Y, and Z. Is X, Y, and Z allowed in our title or our codes? That's the way I look at it. I'll shut up now.
Okay?
I think you guys have kind of.
I'm sorry?
You've said most of the stuff that I had the opinion on. It's a lot. We've had a lot of time to do it.
I respect all the work she put into this.
Yeah, it's been great. I think a lot of the time seeing where it changes, seeing it on one side where this is what we're doing, this is what we changed, this is why we changed it. That, I think for the future, that would be easier for the community to understand what we're doing.
Yeah, and I don't know if a lot of people understand why we make changes. It's because something was done and it didn't go in our favor or to the benefit of the community, so we had to create something for the protection. That's what these are for. I think Doug and his staff did a great job. A lot of, yeah, and it's not just a good job you did. I have to go in and say, all the deflection you were given all the way down for a year to get this done. Thank you.
Especially from the two on that side of the bench. It was all them done.
You have a motion?
I think Mark's.
Mark, did you have something?
To the extent, Mark Bybee, city attorney, just to the extent, like, to kind of offer some context of the motivation behind why it was presented in such a large document. When you go about editing code, you can't treat any section as a silo, right? It's not like one section of code exists independent of all the others, and it doesn't matter what you do there, it won't impact the others. And what can happen over time, and this exists in code, I'm not going to be able to go on precise examples because the last I reviewed this, it's been over a year ago. That's how long this has been, since we went through the edits. But when you make changes sometimes to just a section, it creates a section that, like, inconsistencies throughout the whole title, if you will, because you didn't change everything, that needed to be changed. And so I can tell you from doing this for multiple cities that sometimes I'm asked for a change, and it's like, well, a good example is actually for the city of Kuna. I was asked to make a change to some animal control ordinances. This has been 4 years ago, probably. And there was one problem that wanted to be fixed, and it created a trickle-down effect that I remember you having to read the summary of the bill and or the ordinance, you didn't like it because you're up there reading the long caption because it has this trickle-down effect. And so the idea in presenting it in this way is you're able to address it as a lump sum and go through and catch those changes and make them code-wide and make some consistency. Because if you do look on MuniCode, which is where your code's maintained online, you'll see years after some individual sections. You have many that are as old as 1977. That was the last time that was actually looked at, that section. You have some as recent as 2023 that it's been looked at. And so you've had like spot changes is kind of how it's been done historically. And over time it grows and, have consistency problems. And so when this started, Jason's last name, is it Hellman? I'm trying to remember now. Is that right? Jace Hellman. Jace Hellman, the prior planning director, before Doug was appointed. He started the process. He worked on it with Bill Gigray from my office was the first draft. Another attorney that's not at our office anymore, she's now at the Attorney General's office. She helped midway through in review. Her name's Andrea Nelson. And doing a lot of the reviews and edits. Then ultimately, I was the final reviewer and editor from our office. I think our office probably has between 120 and 150 hours in review time into this document. So it wasn't just done, off the cuff and without thought. The problem is it's taken now so long since our review to get to here. It's been at least a year since I've looked at it, right? It's taken that long to get through the process. And so that's some of the methodology, some of the background, and code edits are difficult. They just are, but the idea here in bringing it together as one is let's try and actually make something that works cohesively. Now, I'd love to say we nailed it perfectly, but I guarantee at some point we're going to find something that said, wish we would have done that different, and we'll do those, work those out. But that's the nature of state legislation too. It happens, they adopt something, it starts to get applied, and you're like, okay, now we see in that circumstance that section needs a little work, but we tried to kind of create a whole system here and bring in this way. So I don't know to the extent that offers any clarification. I just wanted to give some background on how we got here and why it was approached in the manner it was.
I think the biggest issue for me was just making sure that we continue to have the public hearings here, which we addressed. The lot splits for people who want to develop their land in smaller, not the big developers who come in, like you say, who mull through it, but also the average Joe who has a couple of acres who wants to develop. It was important to make sure that they have protections as well. So that's all I have to say. I'll entertain a motion if you guys have one.
As far as a recommendation
Yeah.
for motion, it'd be to approve the language changes. This is not proposed in an ordinance format. I think it'd still need to come, for a later ordinance reading and put into ordinance format to be formally adopted. It doesn't even have an ordinance number assigned yet, so.
So we'll approve all the updates and then it'll come back to you for review.
Yeah, it'd come in to basically to make it look like an ordinance.
To take the red lines out and,
Yeah, put it, and, because the way it would be, I'd write in the ordinances, sometimes you have ordinance changes that are just like, if it's a, paragraph, you're striking out this language, adding in this. This one would be repealing titles 5 and 6 and replacing it with this new title, is how it would be proposed, and so you'd have all the new language. But right now, it's just not formatted like an ordinance, so it'd be approving the language changes, with Doug's additional proposals if you're gonna do that, but then we'd actually need to come with the ordinance later.
and then we'll see that before it comes back too.
Yes. It would be the language that's been approved. It's not a chance for us to go and make a whole new thing. That's not what's happening.
No, I just want, so that we can read it to make sure
Yeah, yes.
And I'm not saying I oppose this in principle by any means. I mean, this is
Oh,
great
it's-
work. It's the whys on some of
Yeah.
them. Is there something, what's driving it from someplace else, state code, that sort of thing. In the track changes, that's why I had asked if there were comments or the whys between each.
Oh, I think it was something that would be helpful. I mean, we've read it for a year.
And I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
By any means, but those whys would have been helpful for me, I guess, in that regard.
Well, and like Mark said, we're gonna find something that we go, why'd we do that? And we make the change. But for now, this is what seems to be what needs to happen to work, to control and to clarify things. That's my opinion.
One of the things I look at is this document is, I'm going to use the word dynamic. It's ever-changing. Things have changed in our society and in our community since the first Title V was created. And now we have this new one, and I'm going to stick my foot out there and say, this probably won't be the last change we see in the next 50 years, because it's a growing document. Everything gets added.
Sorry, Mark Bybee, City
Yeah, go
Attorney
ahead.
again. To that point, Councilman Laraway, so I said the year 1977. I pointed that out because LUPA, the Local Land Use and Planning Act, was adopted in Idaho. It's either in the 60s or 70s. I can't remember precisely. And so then across the state, there is this rush by all local jurisdictions we have to get our zoning ordinances, we have to get our subdivision ordinances adopted, right? That was basically the authority was granted by the state saying, cities, counties, you're in charge of planning in your boundaries. Now adopt your ordinances. And so then everybody was rushing to do it. And so when you see something from the 70s, that time period, it's an indication to me as an attorney when I see it, that was very likely the first stab at one of these ordinances by the city, right? And it's in a time where everybody's kind of adopting them, and so they're looking at, okay, we have a few bigger cities, like the bigger cities are the fastest usually to adopt it. Let's look at what they did, and they're kind of, copycat methods, and then starting to figure it out. And so now, 1977, is that, anybody tell me how long exactly that was ago? 50-ish years? Are we getting just short of 50? Are we just short of 50? Is that
I
right?
graduated that year, so.
There we go.
Just stop right now.
When's your 50th high school reunion? So there's a lot that is learned in the land use development process in that time, and I think we're trying to capture a lot of the lessons learned, if you will, in updating the code. And I will also offer, I know there's concerns that this is tailored to the developers. I can tell you, as somebody who is heavily involved in the drafting changes, I didn't coordinate with developers on this. That wasn't who I was talking to. I was talking to your planning director. That's who I worked with.
Okay, so we have two changes that we're talking about. Is that correct? So we're gonna make a motion to make those two changes and then bring it back to council for final approval? Is that what the motion needs to be?
For the coverage.
A motion to approve the language, and then we would bring back forward on an agenda the ordinance with an effective date to codify the changes. I don't think that necessarily needs to be in a public hearing, but this
Okay.
same language, as approved this evening, if approved, will be back before you as the effective ordinance with an effective date. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay?
I do agree with John, though, about disseminating information. You know, with being a year, and some folks are just,
We can all do better at that.
yeah. You guys have a motion?
I would move we approve the language changes for ordinance amendment 23-01-OA and the director's recommendations. Does that need to be in there
Second.
as well? Right.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
That would be a tie, so I will vote aye on that motion. So that motion carries.
I do want to say thank you to Cindy. She's put in a lot of work, more than I've ever seen, so.
I really appreciate the document.
All right, that takes us to consideration of ordinance 2024-05, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cuna making certain findings and enlarging the boundaries of the Cuna Municipal Irrigation System by the inclusion of Ada County Assessors Idaho B2R53 LLC and declaring water rights appurtenant thereto are pooled for delivery purposes, and directing the city clerk to record this ordinance as provided by law, directing the city engineer and provide notice of this ordinance to the Boise Cuna Irrigation District, the owners, and update the irrigation system map, and providing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor, case number 2305ZC, we needed to re-table that one?
Oh, I'm sorry, we'll come back to that,
Okay.
if you don't mind, since I blew past it. And I already read this.
I make a motion that we waive 3 readings of ordinance 2024-05.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Make a motion that we approve ordinance 2024-05 as
Second.
published.
Motion's made and seconded, and Nathan, would you poll the council?
Councilmember McPherson,
Yes.
Councilmember Biggs,
Yes.
Councilmember Laraway,
Yes.
Council President Bruce.
Aye.
And that motion carries. Thank you for calling my attention back to that. Case number 2305ZC, due to a legal noticing error, the newspaper staff, in the newspaper, staff requests this item be tabled till April 16, 2024, if that would be the desire of the council.
I make a motion that we table case number 23-05ZC to a date certain of April 16th, 2024.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. We did have, so Paul Stevens has retired, and I will be interim Public Works Director while we advertise and post that out. So he provided as engineer and Public Works Director. So we are looking for those positions most likely separately, but I guess it could be possible if we found that right fit to do it in one again. But so we've got those jobs posted and out on the website, and I think we've already got some responses. So hopefully we can get that handled pretty quick. And I have every confidence in our people out in Public Works to keep everything running smoothly, and I think everything's gonna go along just fine. There might be a couple of hiccups when it comes to some of the stuff that needs to be accomplished as far as new things coming in, but we'll be able to keep up with what has come in and move things forward that way. We have a engineer of record on a temporary basis that will help us out, and we do have an engineer with qualifications to stamp plans and that type of thing. So whatever their comfort level is where we'll go with that, and then we'll contract out otherwise. So hopefully it won't be too big of a issue to get taken care of, so.
It's a good spot, somebody will fill it.
Yeah. So anyway,
I had one other thing.
yes, go ahead.
The Middleton Planning and Zoning approved the, I guess it was the school-related ordinance that we talked about where if a school's at a certain capacity, the development won't make it to council. Just kind of keep an eye on that. Maybe it's something that we want to address down the road, depending on how it works out for them, especially with the school district where it's at school
Yeah.
capacity. So just something to think about, kind of put it in the back of your mind.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that and see where that goes. Okay. Anything else?
I have one thing. The city's version of Touch the Truck event for the kids has been scheduled for June 8th again. That's our pterodactyl event, they've called it. So
That's awesome.
Stacy was working on a tank, but the guy that was able to bring it out already had commitments. So there's new addition this year. There will be some military equipment there, just not a tank like we were hoping. So, but it'll be the normal, cranes, trash trucks, tractors, and everything in between. Police, I'm sure will be there again. Fire.
You know, the recruitment office always brings the helicopter out to the high school.
We need Harrier jets here.
I don't know if you can land a helicopter.
Yeah, F-35, something.
And one more thing.
Help us out.
Good, thank you for working on
Yeah.
that every year. That's always a big hit with the kids. so I
It is.
appreciate
And one
that.
more thing also, man.
Okay, you bet.
This last Saturday, I want to speak out to about a lot of the volunteers that came out for the CUNA City Easter egg hunt. Hundreds of kids at the high school, and thank the high school and the school district for allowing us to use that property. But it was amazing to watch all those little kids run around excited, but it took a lot of work. And I know Sherry Russell's been doing it for quite a few years.
A lot of years.
Anyway, thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
If nobody had anything else, then we are adjourned.
There you go.
Thank you.